So, this webinar is People Not Problems, Adapting the Person-Centered Trauma-Informed Lens to the Library. And our lovely presenter today is Amanda Goldson, who is an adult services librarian at the Pineville Library, part of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library System. Amanda developed a person-centered trauma-informed training for library staff, and she will share kind of some best practices, what the PCTI framework is, and how you can use it to view and approach work in libraries. So I will hand it over to Amanda.
Thank you, Devin. So we're going to get started with the webinar in just a second, but before we do that, if you would go to menti.com, because there's a lot of interactivity in this webinar, and I'd love to get your thoughts through polls and things like that. So if you could sign into Menti, and it will show up at the top of every slide. So if I go by it too fast, it's okay. You can get to it in just a second. But you can go ahead and use that QR code if that's helpful. Okay. So our first question is, what comes to mind when you hear the word trauma? I'm going to get into what it means and how we approach it in PCTI, but I'd love to get your input about what you think of when you hear the word trauma. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow, y'all are quick. It's coming in fast. I see resilience, I see distress, pain, tragedy, stress. Yeah, all of that is definitely related to or a part of trauma. Yeah, I'll give you another couple seconds to input those thoughts. Yeah. Yeah, so we have some examples of specific traumas, and then we have some more broad understandings like pain and tragedy. And I love that there's healing in there too. All right, well, we're going to move on to the next slide. Thank you for that. So who am I? I think we should get started with that. My name is Amanda Goldson. My pronouns are she, her. And as Devin said, I'm an adult services librarian at the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. I have been in public libraries and academic libraries for a number of years, and I'm passionate about serving people from all experiences, especially helping folks with social and emotional needs. And you can see that in my interest in PCTI, but also in my programming and other events at the library and such. So why be person-centered and trauma-informed? Well, I thought we should look at our major professional organization, and our code of ethics from ALA in 2021 was amended to include the following. And I'll read it aloud because I think it's really important to ground ourselves in this statement. This is Principle 9 from the Code of Ethics. We affirm the inherent dignity and rights of every person. We work to recognize and dismantle systemic and individual biases, to confront inequity and oppression, to enhance diversity and inclusion, and to advance racial and social justice in our libraries, communities, profession, and associations through awareness, advocacy, education, collaboration, services, and allocation of resources and spaces. So, as we talk today about person-centered trauma-informed practices and the lens that is, I thought I'd better give you some background because we're talking about a workshop that was offered to Charlotte Mecklenburg Library staff on PCTI, or person-centered trauma-informed practices in the library. And we're going to be exploring those practices and that lens today together. So Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library is in Charlotte, North Carolina, and surrounding towns. Our mission is to improve lives and build a stronger community. And we have 21 locations, and you can see all the stats there. They should be fairly up to date. So we have about 450 employees, and we serve more than 1 million citizens. So in this training, it was optional, and 26% of full-time staff attended one of our trainings in our first iteration. So we offered 6, and almost, well, a little more than a quarter of full-time staff attended one. And 8 out of our 91 participants completely unprompted requested that all Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library staff receive PCTI training. So that to me tells me it's important, and they want their colleagues to know about these principles so that they can incorporate them more fully into their services and programs and policies and procedures. We also got a lot of comments about how relevant it is to everyday library work. So I would be remiss if I did not mention that we partnered with the Jewish Federations of North America. Their Center on Aging and Trauma developed the person-centered trauma-informed approach. So this is a North America-wide organization, and they developed PCTI. And then Jewish Family Services, which is of Greater Charlotte, provided local expertise and helped do these trainings for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library. Okay, all of that was preface to what is PCTI. This is a lens through which we can view the world. It's a holistic way to provide services that considers the experiences and needs of each person. So that's the person-centered, and then the trauma-informed part comes in being sensitive to others and recognizing that we cannot know what trauma people have experienced in their lives. We are not privy to all of that information, but we can engage with everyone in the most respectful and empowering manner possible. And that goes for everyone in our lives. So that goes for our patrons or customers in the library. That goes for our colleagues and coworkers. And also in the way we develop policies and procedures for the library. So, and you can even use it with your family and friends, because it really is just a lens of how to view the world. So it's a way of understanding programs and services and providing trauma-informed environments. So it's not a mental health interventions per se, because we are not, most of us at least, are not mental health providers. But it is broader than that, and it addresses public education about trauma and how to create trauma-informed spaces and practices. So trauma, we've been throwing around that word, or at least I have. So what do we mean by trauma? So this definition is trauma is when we experience very stressful, frightening, or distressing events that are difficult to cope with or out of our control. It could be one incident or an ongoing event that happens over a long period of time. It can even be generational. I think we've seen a lot of things coming out recently about generational trauma. So the important parts of this definition are it's scary, it's outside of your ability to cope with it, or you're having trouble coping with it, and it's out of your control. It's something that has happened to you. So there are four main trauma responses, and these probably will ring a bell for most of you, or at least the first three. Trauma responses are simply nervous system reactions to stress or danger, and they're there to help you survive. So we don't want to judge them as being good or bad or better or worse. Instead, we want to look at them as our nervous system is helping us to survive this event, survive this situation. So the first one is fight. This one, you might feel angry, aggressive. You might feel like you need to defend yourself. Another reaction or response would be a flight, which is when you want to run away from the situation. You want to avoid the danger. Or you might freeze. You might feel numb or paralyzed when something traumatic happens. And you might feel stuck or unable to move. And then the last one may be new to some of you. The other one is fawn. This is where you try to please or appease others to diminish the risk to yourself. So you might become overly accommodating, trying to avoid conflict or danger. So if we think about these as fight would be if you are going to address the conflict head on. Flight, you're going to get out of the way, remove yourself from the situation. Freeze is when you sort of get stuck there and you have a hard time responding. And then fawn is when you really try to approach the danger and please or appease the person who's presenting a danger to you. So hopefully that makes sense. And to talk about trauma a little bit more, we have Dr. Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain. This is a simple visual to explain how the brain works in response to stress or emotions. So it doesn't go into every single part of the brain. It's a general overview to show us how stress or emotions can be impacting your brain. So if you want to, if you're in a safe space, you can hold up your hand like this. You don't have to, but I will do it. So if you hold up your hand and put your thumb in your palm, this, and then fold over your fingers. This is like your little model of your brain. So this is like what's in your head. In this model, the brain stem is right here at your wrist. Your arm is the spinal cord. And then the limbic system is your thumb and your palm. So this is where your hippocampus and your amygdala are. You've probably heard about amygdala, if nowhere else, on TikTok or in a video on some other social media platform. The amygdala helps you experience feelings, form memories, and react emotionally. So this is the limbic system. This is where the amygdala is. And then we're going to fold over our fingers. And this is the prefrontal cortex. So this is the thinking brain. This part helps you think logically, make decisions, make plans, and control your impulses. So what do we think happens when we get stressed? When we're stressed, Dr. Siegel says we flip our lids. So that means this prefrontal cortex, all this good thinking brain goes offline. Instead, our limbic system, the amygdala and the hippocampus, are online and in charge. So that means we're experiencing our feelings, we are reacting emotionally. And then when we're calm, our thinking brain comes back online. So what this means is that when we are stressed, when we are experiencing a trauma, or a trauma response to something that happened in the past, we go offline in our ability to make plans, to think logically. Instead, we are reacting emotionally. So we know that when people experience a lot of trauma, they flip their lids more easily and they have a harder time coming back online with their thinking brain. So the more trauma you experience, the more easily you flip your lid and the harder it is to come back. Hopefully that was helpful. And now we're going to do story time. I used to be a children's librarian, so that's where this slide came from. I'm going to tell you a bunch of different scenarios, and they will make sense shortly. At the moment, you might feel like I'm just throwing a lot of different stories at you, but I want to look at different library life scenarios so that we can explain how the PCTI lens can help us see and do things differently. These vignettes are based on real experiences, but I have changed a lot of the details. Okay. And just so you know, the handout that Devin has either put in the chat or will put in the chat has these vignettes on it, and the little symbols will follow us through the presentation. So the moon with the Z's is for you are walking around the library and find a teen sleeping in a chair. When you stop to wake her up, she startles when you approach and becomes agitated and combative. Or you're hosting a program for adults, and the presenter was booked to share information about Catawba Nation pottery. But the day before the event, he emailed you and said he would rather pivot and talk about colonialism and the oppression of Native peoples. So another vignette is the administration of your library has decided that all libraries will now have armed security officers. While you appreciate the emphasis on safety, you are concerned by the quickness of the policy change and the lack of communication with employees and patrons. Or maybe you have a new volunteer who's hired to offer one-on-one technology tutoring to patrons. This new volunteer is very tech savvy, but they have never instructed others in technical skills. Or you're hosting an art program where adults are invited to paint with watercolors while listening to music. You notice that one attendee is finding the music jarring, startling every time the volume increases. Couple more vignettes. Hopefully these are ringing a bell with you. Maybe you're helping someone write a resume. They're not comfortable typing, making you feel like this might go on for hours. You consider typing the resume for them, having them dictate what to say. Or you're partnering with a colleague to host a program. There are empty seats at the front of the room. Your colleague encourages everyone in the back to move up front. And finally, the last vignette is your Spanish language storytime families have almost completely stopped coming to the library. You are staying in contact with some of them, and they say they are afraid to enter a government building. So we're going to look at the PCTI lens and apply it to all those vignettes. So the PCTI lens has 6 principles that we're going to go into in depth. The first one is empowerment, voice, and choice. Then we have trustworthiness and transparency, collaboration and mutuality, peer support, safety, and cultural, historical, and gender considerations. So it's time for another poll. So which PCTI principles apply most to the Catawba Nation pottery vignette that I mentioned a few minutes ago? And I'll remind you of what that is. It is the one where the presenter wanted to pivot and rather instead of talking about pottery, talk about colonialism and the oppression of Native peoples. So far, people think it is cultural, historical, and gender considerations. Okay, we're getting some other votes. Great. All right, yeah. Trustworthiness and transparency. Um, yeah, keep on voting. And I believe I set it up so you can vote for more than one. So maybe not. We'll see. Okay. So we've got a lot of options for what principle applies most or what principles apply most. I would challenge you to think of how almost every single principle could apply somehow. Peer support's a little tricky, but safety definitely applies too, because if you're creating a safe space for people in the library, you want to have that transparency, which is obviously also connected. So it's not a trick question, but it is sort of a, a little eye opener to see that PCTI principles, all of them could apply to the Catawba Nation pottery vignette, and some more than others, but yeah. So thank you for participating in that. All right, we're going to talk about empowerment, voice, and choice first. And you will notice on these PCTI principle slides that in addition to saying which principle we're talking about, also in this one, it's the bottom left-hand corner, there are the vignette symbols, so you can follow along. So empowerment, voice, and choice is allowing people to choose what they want to attend and how they want to participate. So this shows up in the teen who is sleeping example, because empowerment, voice, and choice would encourage us to say, while you cannot sleep here, you can get connected to resources that can give you a safe place to sleep. You can also have a bottle of water or a drink from the water fountain. You can walk around. I can help you find a book to read. I can help you get on the computer. You know, giving the teen options, empowering them to have a choice and a voice is really important in that situation, I think. For the watercolor program, where the music is getting louder and it's disturbing one of the customers or attendees, maybe empowerment, voice, and choice says maybe before the event, either in the event description or in an email to participants, you could suggest that they bring headphones if they're not comfortable listening to the music that you choose. They can either listen to their own music or just have a silent, what is it called? Sound canceling headphones. Spanish language storytime families, maybe empowerment, voice, and choice means you ask them, where would be a better location for you? Maybe you don't feel comfortable coming into the library now, but where can we meet? Can we meet at a community center? Is there a church in the neighborhood where you would feel more comfortable? So it becomes an outreach in this scenario. So empowerment, voice, and choice, like all the PCTI principles, can help you address potential potential hangups by preparing ahead of time. So the next one is trustworthiness and transparency. This means we say what we do and we do what we say. And transparency leads to trust, as we know. So for this principle, an example is the watercoloring to music program. Maybe transparency means not only do you encourage people to bring headphones that are noise canceling if they need them, but also just giving the full run of what's going to happen in that program. So maybe when we do programming, we can give people a more clear understanding of what they're signing up for and what they're going to experience when they get there. And this leads to the Catawba Nation pottery example, which, by the way, this presenter I did have, but this is not the situation. They did nothing wrong. So in this example, we would say that it's important that we stick to the advertised description of this program. Why? Because of trustworthiness and transparency. If we say we're going to present one program and we present a totally different one that has possible triggers in it for certain people, that's not promoting transparency, and that is going to damage our trustworthiness in the eyes of our customers or patrons. So that's when we talk to the presenter and say, it's really important to establish a description and stick to it. And if you want to come back another time and present your other idea, that's great. We're happy to have you come and talk about oppression and all of those topics, but this is not the day. For the security, with this example is the one where your library administration has decided that security guards will be present at all locations. Maybe leadership needs to explain why to both staff and also to your community. Maybe there are notices on buildings and an email that says we are going to have security present in all of our library locations, but maybe there's also that transparency of why. For the Spanish language storytime families, offering an alternate venue transparently is seeking to serve those families. So it's not only empowerment, voice, and choice, and you'll see how these all overlap and feed into each other, but it's also transparency because you're saying, I see you, I am going to do what I say and say what I do, and I'm going to offer you an alternative. So it's both empowerment, voice, and choice, and trustworthiness and transparency. And I'll throw a bonus one in here, and you can answer in the chat if you want. I can't see the chat, but y'all can discuss. For the teen sleeping in the library, why would it be important to explain for trustworthiness and transparency? Why would it be important to explain the policy of not sleeping in the library? Okay. While you're answering that, I will go on to the next one, which is collaboration and mutuality. Collaboration and mutuality is offering opportunities for people to work together on a problem and share their knowledge with each other. So mutuality is about relationship, right? So we don't want there to be a hierarchy in this situation. It's about collaborating and meeting each other where we are. So for this example, for this principle, the example number one is about the resume writing. So you might remember this is the person who was having trouble typing, and you were concerned that it was going to take a long time for this person to write a resume. This is really a situation that is a gray area for me. So I wanted to include it because of that, because I think it's important to balance doing with being with someone and doing things with them and doing things for them. So doing with versus doing for. And I think it's really going to depend on the situation exactly that you're facing. So if that person is really unable to type at all efficiently, and they are applying for jobs where typing is not required, then maybe you type some of it for them. I don't know. But maybe they just need to brush up on their typing skills, and they could use the practice. In that case, you definitely would not want to do it for them. The second example for this one is the security guard example. So my idea for collaboration and mutuality with this example is that maybe you collaborate with the new security guards and create a safe environment for everyone by sharing your mutual knowledge and your mutual approaches to solve the issue of security in your location. So maybe that looks like I share library values, library policies and procedures, but also the values that we stand by as public librarians and as all librarians. So maybe it's I share that and they share security practices that would make our building more safe. So that's collaboration and mutuality. And then the third one is for the volunteer tech tutor. So maybe collaboration and mutuality for that one could be a staff member doing the first couple tech tutoring sessions with or alongside the new volunteer. So sharing their own experience working to teach people skills while also learning from the volunteer about maybe some technical knowledge that they didn't have. So maybe the volunteer is able to teach the staff member as well as the customer. The next one is peer support. So Pete the cat is waving at us. Peer support is offering ways that peers can provide support and understanding for each other. So the little computer up in the right-hand corner is the tech tutor again. And maybe instead of collaboration and mutuality being partnering the tech tutor with a staff member, maybe you want to try a different approach and have two volunteers work together to do tech tutoring. So that would be more of peer support. And then Spanish language storytime families, maybe you're not able to do an outreach in the community for them every week. Maybe that's just not possible with your schedule. But peer support would say, maybe if you can't come every week, they could establish their own play dates on the off weeks when you're not able to be there. Maybe they can support each other in other ways. So encouraging them to support each other when you're not able to provide a certain service, or when you are able to provide a certain service, peer support is still important. Safety. This is creating an environment where people feel physically and psychologically free of harm and safe. So there are a bunch of examples for this one. The first one I want to talk about is the colleague of yours who wants everybody to move up to the front of the room. There are lots of reasons why people might not want to be at the front of the room. It might be that they need access to a restroom quickly. It might be that they don't feel safe when people are sitting behind them. There are a number of reasons. It might be trauma related, it might not, but for the sake of those who are having a safety issue, I would encourage you not to strongly encourage people to move up to the front of the room. I try to say, please sit where you're comfortable. This is where I'll be presenting, just so you know, and you are welcome to sit wherever would be best for you. For the teens sleeping in the library, we can say, it's really not safe for you to be sleeping in the library, but we want you to be safe. So, how can we help you find a place where you can sleep safely? For the Catawba Nation pottery example, where the presenter wanted to pivot, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but safety and the topics being discussed is important. So that psychological safety of knowing what you're coming to the library for and being prepared to experience a topic that might be triggering to you is important for your psychological safety, to not have it sprung on you. And then for the Spanish language storytime families, the need for them to feel safe is paramount. So it's hard to build relationships and engage with your children when you don't feel safe. So we might think, oh, but the library is a safe place. You're welcome here. You're safe here. But psychological safety means the person gets to decide what's safe for them. So what we think they need is not necessarily what they need. And then the sixth principle is cultural, historical, and gender considerations. This is where we avoid cultural stereotypes, we offer gender responsive services, and we recognize historical trauma. For the teen sleeping example, say the teen was a young female and maybe you are a large male staff member. You may want to consider historical gender considerations and either be very aware of your physical space and maybe even bringing a colleague along with you who's not as imposing. For our Spanish language storytime families, we really want to be careful to avoid cultural stereotypes. We want to avoid any assumptions about why people want to come to a Spanish language story time. We definitely want to avoid any assumptions about legality or their fear of government buildings. But if we have a population that we want to serve, that we need to serve, and many of them are afraid to come into our building, then we need to offer alternatives to reach those communities. So for a future Spanish language story time, maybe that won't be an issue, but if most of the people or many of the people who were coming are not able to come safely anymore, at least psychologically safely, then it's time to reconsider our options. Okay, so the PCTI lens, remember, there's 6 principles and they're all on the handouts that Devin has shared. They are empowerment, voice, and choice, trustworthiness and transparency, collaboration and mutuality, peer support, safety, and cultural, historical, and gender considerations. So, which principle do you feel most confident applying immediately? Oh, good. We're getting some responses. Yeah. Okay, trustworthiness and transparency is winning out right now. I see no one's voting for cultural, historical, and gender considerations. Oh, yep, never mind. One person did. That's great. Yeah, trustworthiness and transparency. We feel pretty comfortable with that, it seems like. Yeah, thank you for voting. This is really interesting. It looks like most of you are most comfortable with trustworthiness and transparency, which makes sense because I can't remember who said it because I wasn't planning to say this, but it I know someone has said, somebody in some position of authority has said that the library is one of the most trustworthy institutions. And so we feel comfortable being trustworthy and transparent. That's a good indication of that. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. So this is a thank you. You can contact me at at agoldson@cmlibrary.org with any questions that we don't get to today, but there's a little bit more time, so we will get to some questions. What barriers do you anticipate encountering when applying PCTI at your library? I'm just wondering what barriers you anticipate. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. I hope you're reading other people's and finding commonality and, you know, we can support each other. Okay. Yeah. A lot of barriers, but hopefully some of these are things that we can make incremental change. Yes, this one, staff will make mistakes. Yes, we all make mistakes all the time. And what we want to do is give ourselves grace and give each other that as well. Just knowing that we're doing our best. And to do that, you have to actually do your best. So, but I think we're all mostly doing our best all the time. Yeah. Thank you for sharing these barriers. I hope that um, as we take questions in a minute, that you can ask ways to maybe we can brainstorm together about ways to problem solve or address these barriers. My last question for you is, what takeaways do you have from today? I know it went by really fast and we do have time for questions and answers, but before that, what takeaways do you have? As you answer, I will talk. Um, I hope that one thing you're taking away is an interest in this work and empathy for your fellow people. Yeah, encouragement. I'm so glad you got encouragement from this. Oh, wonderful. Okay. Yeah. It's definitely worth the extra time and effort to make people feel more comfortable. And you do not have to be a mental health expert to apply a PCTI lens. Recommended reading. Yes, I do. And I forgot to put it on a slide. So I will send it to Devin. And then when Devin sends out the information after this, um, it will be included. Yeah. Okay. You're right. This is about doing the basics of customer service exceptionally well. And it's being aware of how empathy can impact our customer service and how awareness of people's trauma can impact that. And also, it's about really serving individual customers with what they need. So that's that person-centered piece, is really meeting people where they are and not applying like a blanket approach to everybody who asks a certain question. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to go to the next slide, but y'all can continue to put those takeaways in there, and I'll see them later. So, okay, this is again the contact me slide. And Devin, would you like to jump in and see if there are any questions for me?
All right, I was muted. Thank you so much, Amanda. Yeah, we have questions that came in from the chat, and I think some folks kind of responded to the first one, which was, would it fall outside of PCTI concepts to propose a compromise with the Catawba Nation presenter wherein they give context to the artwork and bring up topics on colonialism?
Yeah, so that's another like that's another situation where it's sort of a gray area until you know more of the specifics, right? So, I definitely would want to be transparent with the attendees of the program because it could be a triggering discussion for them. But maybe there's a compromise. Maybe there could be a email sent out the day of saying, you know, FYI, we might talk about colonialism and the oppression of Native peoples briefly at this program. Like, I don't want to say a trigger warning, but a trigger warning. Um, just to let people know that it's about more than pottery. And maybe they know that, maybe they assume that because of the topic of Native American pottery. But I would want to be careful about pivoting um, at the last minute.
We have two questions that came into the chat just now, but they're essentially one question. So I'm going to couple them together, which is, do you have recommendations or advice for dealing with a large community trauma like a mass school shooting in your community?
Yeah. Um, first of all, I'm just really sorry that you're facing that. And that's something for me to think about as far as how I would apply PCTI. My initial thoughts are giving people the using those principles like empowerment, voice and choice, trustworthiness and transparency, and of course, safety to provide an environment at your library where people feel safe, where people feel heard, where people feel like they have some power. Um, that's a really hard situation, and I don't pretend to know all the answers or know any answers, but if I were in that situation, I think I would um, lean into empathy and meeting people where they are and just being real with each other. I mean, yeah, that's that's my initial thoughts. And if you want me to consult with some other people and find out more about how to do that or find some resources, you can email me and I will get back to you.
We have a question that came in earlier in the chat, asking, so this is an example, and the person's asking, would this be an example of the safety PCTI principle? So the person shared, I've started seeing more YA books, such as the Iron Widow series, um, by Ziran J. Zhao, including a note section in the front pages warning that there will be topics of sexual assault, violence, etc. within the book. Sometimes it will say the book is based on historical events, which is why it's important to include these topics.
So the question, Devin, was, is this an example of safety?
Yes.
Okay. So I would say it's safety, yes, but also trustworthiness and transparency, just being really clear up front about um, what topics would be easily understood to be triggers. So you can never know all the triggers of anybody. Um, and at the same time, you can be thoughtful and anticipate potential things that could cause a trauma response in someone. So I would think a trigger warning like that would be an example of both safety and trustworthiness and transparency, and giving people an empowerment to say, maybe this book is not for me, or maybe this book is not for me right now. Because we know that not every book is for us, and not every book is for us right now. Even books that we might enjoy or get a lot out of at another time maybe are not for us at this moment in this situation. So I think I've seen a lot of that, and I've also seen it in TV shows and movies and stuff like that too. I mean, I know it's been there for a while, but I'm seeing it more and more, like little
Yeah.
contains sexual assault or contains violence or
There are more in adult fiction as well. This
yes.
person added in YA, but I think there are a lot of titles for adults that have added that in. Two resources actually that I'd recommend for this are Storygraph, which is like a book tracking app that's gotten particularly popular as people move potentially away from Goodreads. Has included content warnings for titles. So if your readers like using a book tracking app, Storygraph is good for that. There's also a crowdsourced website of trigger warnings for movies, TV, and they also have some books called forgive this title, but the website's called Does the Dog Die? And that is something that can be a good resource. I had it recommended for me for movies, but I also think they do have content warnings for books as well. So that's a nice resource to share among staff or maybe even patrons as well if they're looking for something like that.
Yeah, I've not heard of that website. Thank you, Devin.
Mhm. Any other questions? Okay, Anne's sharing in the chat that she uses Does the Dog Die as a resource all the time. Yeah. I had it recommended to me by a friend who doesn't work in libraries, and I was like, oh, this is a great reader's advisory tool in a way.
Hmm. It sounds like it. So one question I anticipated getting but didn't get, since we've got a little bit of time, is what if your policy or procedure does not seem to be PCTI inspired? And I did some thinking about this, and I was obviously we all face this, some more than others, but being empowered as an individual to address how we can be more empathetic with our colleagues, with our customers or patrons. And then in that empowerment, talking to our managers, advocating for change, and also, even if your policies or procedures are very rigid, which they can be, you can still add empathy in your enacting of those policies or procedures. So maybe you have to ask someone to leave for the day, but you say, you have to leave for the day. And can I call someone to come and get you? Can I refer you to another service? Those kinds of things where we're providing flexibility within the rigid, sometimes rigid, structures that we all work in. Hopefully that was helpful. I thought somebody might ask it. So, Devin, do we have any more? It looks
We
like we have
have
a
a
raised
hand
hand.
raise. Yeah. Lenny, do you want to share a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just not exactly sure how to ask it textually. So I was wondering, about like if you are going to be covering something like in an event and you want to include empathy and cultural consideration, but you are not somebody who has experienced that yourself. How do you make sure that there is space for it in the event without like white splaining or mansplaining it? Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's a really good question. And I can only say what is coming to mind right now, but I'm happy to think more about it if you want to email me. Um, what's coming to mind right now is that it's so important to create a safe space. And of course, we don't want to, white splain or mansplain. Um, and we want to create a space where people feel comfortable, um, and people feel safe. Um, and I keep saying the same thing. I'm sorry. Um, so I guess I need to think about that more, actually. So if you would email me, I'm happy to think more about it.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's a hard question, so
It's a tough question.
because the alternative is like ignoring it. And there's then
Yes,
that elephant in the room, and you want to make sure there's space for it. You just want to cover it right. But if you're paralyzed to like do it right, then you'll just end up avoiding it, and that's not right either.
you're exactly right. Um, yeah. So as obviously, if you have a colleague or someone you can consult, that's a great place to consult with someone. But outside of that, I need to think about it more.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we are at 3:01. Amanda, thank you so much. This was fabulous. I feel like we covered so many aspects of the PCTI framework, and some great questions came in the chat. Know that you can reach out to Amanda after the webinar. I will include the slides, the handouts, the feedback survey, and the recording in my email tomorrow. But thank you all for being such a fantastic group, and I hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.